My distant uncle passed away and left me his entire fortune. More than $100 million, but I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I acted like I was broke and reached out to my family just to see who would actually help. My mom said she was too busy. My brother laughed and told me to get a job. But my cousin, who barely knew me, drove 3 hours with a bag of groceries. What I did next changed everyone's lives forever. My name's Joey. I'm 29. And if you asked anyone in my family, they'd tell you I'm the one who never figured life out. The funny thing is, that used to be true. I was bouncing between odd jobs, barely getting by, and my family loved reminding me of it. My mom always said I needed to get serious. My older brother thought I was lazy. And my dad, before he passed, used to say I'd only learn things the hard way. Well, life has a weird sense of humor because the hard way ended up leading me straight to something I never saw coming, a $100 million inheritance from an uncle I barely even knew existed. The story really begins about 2 months before I got that phone call. I was living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The kind of place where you could smell detergent through the floorboards and hear dryers humming at 2 a.m. Rent was $700, and even that felt like too much most months. My car was over 10 years old and made a noise like a dying seal every time I turned left. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't happy either. I just existed, and my family treated me like background noise in their lives. My mom, Linda, was the self-appointed matriarch, loud, controlling, and always right. My brother, Nate, was the golden child. Married young, bought a house, had kids, made 6 figures in sales. He was the kind of guy who used networking as a verb in casual conversation. My sister, Amber, was somewhere in between, a nurse with 2 degrees and the ability to make me feel 12 years old just by raising an eyebrow that we weren't close. After Dad's funeral 3 years ago, the calls stopped. The group texts faded. Eventually, it was like I didn't exist unless they needed something fixed or moved. Then came a call. It was from a law office in New York. The man on the other end said, "Mr. Carter, I'm calling regarding the estate of your late uncle, Jameson Carter." I remember blinking, trying to place the name Uncle Jameson. The only time I'd ever heard of him was when Dad mentioned his eccentric brother who'd moved away decades ago after a family feud. I thought he was long dead, or just didn't want anything to do with us. The lawyer continued, explaining that Uncle Jameson had passed away without a spouse or children. Apparently, I was the only living relative he hadn't cut from his will. At first, I thought it was a scam. But the next day, I got an official letter, embossed and everything, inviting me to New York to discuss the estate. I borrowed gas money from a friend and drove there, expecting maybe a few $1,000s. When the lawyer slid the folder across the table, I actually laughed out loud because I thought the number was a typo. $103 million, give or take, in assets and liquid funds. He left all this to me? I asked. The lawyer nodded. He was very particular. He wanted his estate to go to the one family member who never asked him for anything. I sat there for a long time, completely stunned. My life had just changed in a way I couldn't even process. But as the shock faded, a strange calm settled over me. I realized something. For the first time ever, I held all the cards. And I wanted to see who in my family actually cared about me. Not the version of me they'd built in their heads. Not the failure they like to look down on, but me, the person that I made a plan. I didn't tell a soul about the inheritance. I didn't buy anything flashy. I didn't move or quit my part-time job at the hardware store. I kept living exactly as before. The only difference was that I had a secret, one I intended to use carefully. That a few weeks later, I started making calls that I began with Mom. She answered on the 3rd ring, already irritated. "Joey, I'm in the middle of something," she said, like I'd interrupted a state dinner. "Hey, Mom," I said, keeping my voice small. "Listen, I could use a little help. Rent's coming up, and I'm short. Maybe a couple hundred, just until next week." There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Joey, you can't keep living like this. You're almost 30. I told you to apply at Nate's company. Why can't you just listen for once?" "Mom, I'm too busy for this right now, Joey." She cut me off. "Figure it out." Click, that was it. My own mother hung up on me when I asked for help. It stung more than I expected. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling this cold mix of anger and sadness build inside me. But I wasn't done. Next was Nate. He answered with his usual confident tone. Yo, little bro, what's up? I explained my situation again. Pretending to sound embarrassed, he laughed. You're still doing this? You know what, Joey? Maybe you should try getting a real job instead of mooching off people. Everyone's hiring these days. I tried to joke it off, but he wasn't playing. Come on, Nate. Just a loan. No, man, he said, still laughing. I've got my own bills. You'll figure out. You always do, right? And just like that, he hung up too. I didn't even bother calling Amber. I already knew what she'd say. Something about personal responsibility or boundaries. So I scrolled through my contacts and stopped on a name I barely remembered. Clara, my cousin. We met maybe 3 times growing up, once at a family reunion, once at grandma's funeral, and once at some awkward barbecue years ago. She lived a few towns over. Quiet, kind of shy. We never really talked, but something told me to call her anyway. When she answered, her voice was soft but warm. Joey? Wow, it's been ages. Everything okay? I hesitated, then repeated my story. I hate to ask, I said, but I'm in a tight spot. Rent's due, and say no more, she interrupted. Are you home right now? I blinked. Yeah. Okay. I'll be there in a few hours. 3 hours later, she showed up at her beat-up hatchback with a bag of groceries, a thermos of soup, and a folded $20 bill. I know it's not much, she said, smiling awkwardly, but it's something. I tried to protest, but she waved me off. Don't worry about it. Family helps family. That line stuck with me. Family helps family. Because up until that moment, I didn't believe it. Not with my family. That night, after she left, I sat on my couch surrounded by bags of food and thought about everything. Mom's cold dismissal, Nate's laughter, and Clara's quiet kindness. I felt something shift inside me, a mix of gratitude and resolve that I realized I'd been given an opportunity, not just to see who cared, but to truly change how things played out. My family had spent years judging me as the failure, the screw-up. But now, I had the means to test every relationship, every bond, every fake smile. I decided to take it further. I pretend to spiral, slowly, believably. I make them see what it felt like to ignore someone who needed them, to show them the difference between greed and goodness. What I didn't realize then was how quickly that small experiment would spiral out of control. Because once money enters the equation, especially hidden money, people change. And when the truth finally started to leak out, it didn't just destroy old grudges. It exposed things about my family I never wanted to know. And it all started with one dinner, the dinner I wish I could say went well, but it was the night everything began to unravel. I hadn't even planned on inviting them over. Honestly, I would have been happy never seeing most of them again. But a few days later, Mom called out of nowhere and said, Joey, we should have dinner. It's been too long. Amber's off this weekend, and Nate's bringing the kids. Her voice was sugary, that fake sweetness she used only when she wanted something. For a second, I almost told her about the inheritance, just to see how fast that sweetness would turn into calculation. But I bit my tongue and agreed. Dinner was set for Saturday. I spent the morning cleaning my apartment, even though I knew Mom would still find something to criticize. The place smelled faintly of detergent and coffee. I'd even picked up a rotisserie chicken and a few sides from the store. Cheap, but decent. By 6 o'clock, they arrived, a wave of perfume, laughter, and judgment. Mom stepped in first, wrinkling her nose like the air itself offended her. Oh, Joey, she said, scanning my tiny kitchen living room combo. Still here? You know you'd save money if you moved in with Nate for a while. Nate chuckled, tossing his jacket over a chair like he owned the place. Yeah, bro. We got a guest room. Fair warning, though, the kids wake up early. Might be too much for you. Amber trailed behind them, polite smile in place, already glancing at the floor like she was checking for stains. It's cozy, she said, her go-to insult disguised as kindness that I tried to shrug it off. Dinner's ready. I didn't have time to cook much, but Mom interrupted. You didn't make anything homemade? No, just store-bought, I said, feeling small again. She sighed dramatically, like I'd failed another one of her invisible tests. You know, Joey, Sometimes I wonder what you do all day. They ate, though. Mom complained that the chicken was dry. Nate asked if I even knew how to season food. I just smiled through it, sipping water and letting them talk. Amber showed pictures from her vacation in Italy. Nate bragged about his promotion. Mom told a long story about a charity gala she'd attended, emphasizing, more than once, how networking with the right people was important in life. That I nodded, pretending to care, while inside a low, steady burn simmered. When the conversation finally lulled, I said casually, "So, Clara stopped by last week." Mom's fork froze midair. "Clara?" "Yeah," I said. "She brought groceries when I was short on rent. It was really nice of her." Amber frowned. "Clara? Our cousin Clara? The one who still drives that rust bucket?" "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. She didn't even hesitate. Mom set her fork down slowly. "Joey, I hope you didn't make her feel obligated. She's not exactly in a position to help anyone." "She offered," I said. Nate chuckled. "Man, she's always been too soft. That girl would give her last dollar to a stranger." Mom nodded, satisfied. "Exactly. You shouldn't take advantage of that, Joey. You need to learn some pride." Something about that word, pride, made my teeth clench. Mom had spent her whole life preaching pride while using shame as her favorite tool. I wanted to tell her that Clara had more compassion in one act than the rest of my family combined. But I stayed quiet. Then Nate leaned back in his chair, stretching like he'd just finished a long day. "So, Joey, what's the plan? You sticking with the hardware store forever? Or are you finally going to get serious?" I smiled faintly. "Working on something." Amber tilted her head. "Working on what exactly?" I shrugged. "Just trying to figure things out." Mom sighed again, disappointed. "You've been figuring things out for 10 years. Maybe it's time to admit you're not meant for whatever it is you think you're chasing." That stung, and she knew it. She always knew where to aim. After dinner, as they were leaving, Mom hugged me stiffly and said, "We love you, Joey. We just want what's best for you." Which, in Mom speak, meant we love you as long as you stay beneath us. When they left, I stood in the quiet apartment, the smell of reheated chicken still hanging in the air. Not one of them had asked how I was doing or if I was happy. It was all criticism wrapped in fake concern. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying their words and realized money wasn't the real test. Character was. And my family was failing badly. Over the next week, I started dropping small hints. Might have to sell my car, or work's cutting my hours. Every time, the same response, silence, awkward nods, or "That sucks, man." Then I mentioned it to Clara over the phone. Without hesitation, she said, "If you need anything, Joey, I can send you some money. Don't worry about paying it back." I had to look away because my eyes actually stung. She had so little, yet she was the only one who gave. A week later, Mom invited me to dinner. I went, half curious, half bored. Her house was spotless as always, filled with fake smiles. Nate was bragging about real estate. Amber scrolling her phone. "Joey, you look thin," Mom said, hugging me tightly. "Are you eating enough?" We sat down, and within minutes, she started in. "Maybe it's time you let Nate help you. He's got contacts." Nate smirked. "Yeah, I could get you in at my company. It's not glamorous, but maybe you'll learn some responsibility." "I appreciate it," I said, forcing a smile. "But I'm good." Mom frowned. "Good? Joey, you're nearly 30. You can't live paycheck to paycheck forever." Amber chimed in. "She's right. Don't you want a future?" Then Mom leaned closer. "You're so secretive lately. It's hard to help someone who won't be helped." I laughed softly. "Mom, you hung up on me 2 weeks ago when I asked for $200. Her face flushed. "Don't be dramatic. I was busy." Amber looked up. "You asked Mom for money?" Nate laughed. "You've got to stop with the sob stories, man." The table fell silent. "Right," I said. "Sob stories. My bad." Mom sighed. "We're just trying to push you, Joey. You're capable of more." Dinner ended awkwardly. As they left, Nate whispered something to Amber, and they both laughed. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about Clara, her kindness compared to their arrogance. That's when the idea solidified. I wasn't just going to test them anymore. I was going to teach them. A few days later, I called Mom and told her I'd been let go. "Oh, Joey," she said, annoyed. "What are you going to do now? Don't expect me to fund another phase. Maybe Nate can help." I thanked her and hung up, staring at the wall, unsure if I wanted to laugh or scream. The next day, Clara called again. Hey, I have a friend who runs a cafe. They're hiring part-time. It's not much, but it could help. You're amazing, I told her. She laughed. No, just human. That line stayed with me. I decided my family would finally see what they really valued, kindness or convenience. But before I could act on it, Mom invited me again, this time for Nate's birthday. Bring a small gift if you can, she said sweetly that I didn't realize then. That dinner would be the one where everything truly began to unravel.